Good morning, and we have with us Chris Colwell, who is good enough to take time out of his schedule and come to present to you a case that he was involved in, for which I've already given you copies of the paperwork. Before we begin, Holly Vitsky, Chris is also a professor in this course here in the law, and she teaches the night class on Tuesdays.
Okay.
Okay?
Great. My name's Chris Colwell. I'm an attorney. I don't know if you saw my cover letter, but I practiced in New York. I was first admitted in New York. I moved to Massachusetts, took that bar and the New Hampshire bar, so I'm admitted in those three jurisdictions. And so I remember what it was like to be a law student. Oh, such fun. I went to Vermont Law School, and then I went to practice in New York for a large firm, and now I'm out here in Massachusetts. And I just want to get to, just by a show of hands, how many of you want to litigate, or even thought about what you want to do after graduation? Litigation? Any criminal stuff, anyone? Civil litigation? Got everybody else transactional law? All right. I remember, okay, because I had a great professor when I was in law school, and he started every session, sort of at the start of each class, by who wants to participate? Okay, no hands, fantastic. Because usually he'd say, all right, it's no fun to play with people who don't want to play, so I won't play with you. Who's here because they just want to make more money? That would have been me, all right? I would have raised my hand to that one. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of cut people into groups, and that way I can play with you, and you can torture me as you see fit. Who here, and be honest, who is, and this is a group vote, who's the laziest one in the class? Come on, spit it. Yes. Congratulations, you're the judge. All right. Do you know what they call a lawyer with an IQ of 80?
A judge.
Your Honor. That's right, Your Honor. Okay. Who otherwise doesn't want to participate at all? Because you would have been the jury, all right? Because they basically just sit there. What I was going to do is I was going to ask some of you who wanted to be sort of mock jurors in this some of the questions, and I always prepare whenever there's a bizarre case or a case involving a minority defendant, which it was in this case, or whether I think there's a particular bent, I'd ask those people, and I just want to know it. Are any of you members of PETA? PETA? No PETA members? I'm stuck. Come on, you don't want to admit to it. Come out of the closet. Yeah, the jurors don't admit to that stuff either. How about people who are associated with law enforcement? Have any law enforcement? Okay, you're in the running to be the prosecutor. How about any people who contribute to the MSPCA? Okay, those were going to be my. You are. All right, you can help them. You two can be, all three of you, your prosecution, because you're in the middle now. You get stuck with that. Those were, if I had to go to a jury trial for this case, that's what I would have done. Those are the questions I would have made sure that I got asked. In the Lawrence District Court where this case was held, I'm in there a lot, and so I know the proclivities of certain judges. And generally with this type of case, I didn't send over the photographs, but imagine the most emaciated, starved dog you could imagine, where the ribs are just sticking. It's basically, you could just see the dog. It was disgusting. The pictures were disgusting. You can't really give those pictures to a jury, because they're going to look at that dog and say, this woman is just the sickest person in the world. So you want to take the case to a judge, because the judge has seen it all before. But there was one or two judges over there who were just complete animal nuts, and so I had to put it in the jury session, and I waived the jury at the last minute because I had what I thought would be a reasonable judge. So we have our prosecutors, we have our judge. Anybody work for a vet? Why are you folks in this class? Is it a gut or something? Is there something I don't know? All right. Do you want to be our prosecution team over here? Or the way, a prosecutor's there, right? You want to join me in the defense team? No? Good. Perfect. I'll run over you. It's the prosecution. I should put you on the prosecution. All right. Did everybody read the facts? So you guys are the prosecution, so what do you think are the best facts for the prosecution?
The fact that she didn't feed it?
The fact that she didn't take the dog to see anybody because she was embarrassed by the way that it looked.
That statement was, in my opinion, also one of the worst things in the case. She did feed the dog.
Pork rinds.
Initially pork rinds. That's a bad fact. Any other facts?
She put it in the basement because it was making a mess of the house.
You know, that's actually, they brought that up, but I don't, why is that a bad fact? What's the problem with that?
Well, when it said on the facts, like, it looked as though she would check on it maybe every 3 to 4 hours. And when she saw that it was still sick and throwing up or couldn't lift its head, she continued to go back upstairs and not really do anything. That's what I got from it, but.
But just putting the dog in another room of the house doesn't matter for me.
It's kind of
In
outside.
like
Right.
a damp, cold
That is-
basement.
Living it in an area where actually the dog couldn't possibly get out by itself, where she obviously had to have somebody pull it apart.
Yeah, he was sort of trapped her, he scurried under the stairs or something.
Okay, well, that was at the end, and those are, and they seem to focus on that too, and I didn't understand, the prosecution in this case focused on that fact, but that didn't really go anywhere. It didn't mean anything, the fact that, and I'm assuming that for the tape, you couldn't hear me, and so the statements were that the dog ultimately died under the staircase. And
Off into a space
it is, and I think everybody, at least in this case, I was counting on the judge knowing that one. The most damning fact, and the Commonwealth didn't even play this out, was that this had gone on for weeks. It had slowly and daily starving and wasting away. If I were prosecuting a case, that's where I probably would have turned. Well, if I were prosecuting a case, I wouldn't have prosecuted it, quite frankly. But because you know, I'm still in the psychosis. When you start to litigate a case, you actually believe in the case. If you can't convince anybody of your case unless you actually convince yourself, and so you sort of delude yourself in some of these cases, and it happens a lot. It's called trial psychosis, and it happens a lot. I saw the worst facts are the dog starved to death. It's not that she didn't feed it, although they could have intimated that she didn't feed it, but they didn't. They sort of acquiesced to the fact that she put food down and it got sicker and sicker and died. And it happened over a protracted period of time. The dog wasn't locked in the cage or locked in the basement. What you don't know is that the mother of the defendant ran it like not a daycare, but she did take kids in, and the dog was constantly vomiting and having diarrhea up in the living area, and that's just not sanitary. I don't think, how many of you have pets, by the way? That's what I want. Dogs, cats? Okay, all dog owners, all right. You're off the jury. No, actually, I would have wanted dog owners on the jury. How many of you have had dogs that have died? You know, and you've all seen that, and that's what I was basically planning on for this. So, my defense team, what are our best facts?
I'm not going to be the best defense.
That's all right.
She did make calls to inquire about vet treatment and vets. She didn't do anything about it, but she made calls.
Actually, not true. What isn't in the fact pattern is this woman was completely indigent. Right? She didn't have a dime. She hadn't worked for a fairly long period of time. Her mother didn't make, you know, basically she was on SSI and her mother was on SSI.
Why was she on SSI? Was it mental impairment?
No, just physical defects, I think. She was she's a fairly articulate woman. Every time she met with me, she cried. It was hard to get through the things. And she really liked the dog. I see our best facts, quite frankly, as, or let me continue that thought. She didn't have any money. She hadn't gone to a doctor herself in 2 years, all right? She had conditions that she couldn't even get to a doctor. She had no money. I saw the best fact, and maybe I'll just ask this question. Why did the dog die?
To this day, starvation.
No, no one knows why the dog died. It said it died of malnutrition / starvation. If you look at the report from the vet, malnutrition, starvation due to protracted vomiting and diarrhea. And so, why was there protracted vomiting and diarrhea? You are our veterinarian, and that's the question I'm asking you. Why didn't you do an autopsy? Right, and so, quite frankly, that's the issue. That's one of the issues is, even if she had the money and had all the resources in the world and taken this dog to a vet, would they have been able to do anything?
The question is unanswerable.
There could be a good chance of it.
It's, all right, we'll just jump right into it, and that's it. It's,
And that's what she was charged with creating a situation where she wasn't charged with the death of the animal, she was charged with cruelty.
Well, let's-
So the animal wouldn't have suffered, but for the lack of care was the way that I saw the facts.
aren't you making a huge assumption there? A huge assumption, and that is, one, you're assuming she created the earth and the world. I don't know what your religious bent is or your philosophical bent is, but did she create suffering? Did she create life and death? And this is what I looked the judge square in the eye and said, did the animal starve to death? Yes. Did it starve to death because it couldn't process food? Yes. Is it better, is it ethically better to kill the dog so that, in your opinion, it doesn't suffer? Or is it better to let nature take its course? Who is she?
You're assuming it would have died, but maybe the dog had a parasite, which a $12 medication would have cured that. So in your situation, I mean, you're assuming the dog was going to die.
Possibly.
It might not have with proper care.
But let's ask the veterinarian, what caused, was it a congenital defect? Was it a problem in the digestive tract? Was it a problem with the brain? See, the beautiful part of this, the beautiful part is, nobody knows. This woman took in this dog, and she got it from someone else who couldn't take care of it. And within about 3 or 4 months, the dog got ill. And then for 3 or 4 weeks, it continued to deteriorate till where it died. Now, the best part of our case is, she had another dog. And the other dog was in perfect health. Perfect health. But, yes?
I am a little confused where you said she was indigent, yet she took a dog in, and a dog that requires, probably a lot of food to feed. It's a big dog. Why would she do that if she didn't have the money for it? I don't understand.
That's a very good point, which was never raised by the prosecution. Is if she can afford food, can she afford dog food? The way I flip that around is, she's poor, she can't afford a lot of luxuries, she probably can afford food, she gets what, $600 a month? Her mother gets something, they pay the rent, they have enough left over for food. Are you saying that people are, if they're so poor, they shouldn't have the company of pets?
No, what I'm saying is that she wasn't in a position to take that dog in from somebody else when she couldn't probably provide for it, because she can barely provide for herself.
She couldn't afford veterinary care, but apparently she could afford kibble and water, which is what she fed it before it got sick.
Yeah, but I mean, I think everybody assumes that you own a pet and it, no matter who you get it from or how old it is, it's gonna require some veterinary care at some point, whether it's a shot, an annual shot, or a rabies shot, which costs money. So I don't know why somebody would take in a dog that you have to know that going into it. I would think that's common knowledge.
But then again, somebody could go into it actually having the money and then later not have the money too, so,
Yeah, but from the facts, I thought he said that she was completely indigent, had no money, so.
But the fact is, can indigent people own animals? And,
Can they? Yeah,
but do they always anticipate those kinds of costs?
But none of them, but none of it is violating a city ordinance. It said in the facts that she was supposed to keep them up with their rabies shots, and neither one of them had their shots. I mean, I don't think that you should be able to care for a pet if you're not allowed to abide by the laws that everybody else has to.
Yeah, but
Well, that's a separate issue,
Right.
actually, I think, whether the rabies shot was actually administered or not.
That's why the shadow fund came into existence, because people sought out help if they couldn't afford to have care for their animals, like the dog that was named Shadow.
I have no idea what the shadow
Oh,
fund
I'm
is.
sorry, I apologize.
Denise?
A gentleman who lived in this community had a dog who needed some hip surgery and couldn't afford to take care of it himself. So he was going to quit his job and access his 401k to give the dog the surgery it needed. The story got back to Professor Sullivan, who started the Shadow Fund to raise money for the dog's care. The dog had surgery, not completely paid for. The vet donated some of his time, and today the gentleman still has his 401k, still has his job, and his dog is taken care of. And the Shadow Fund here at MSL is to raise money to help people who can't afford to take care of their animals.
That's interesting. Just like the prosecutor in this case, prosecution team, got all of these animal cases, and there are a number of them, and some of them are really clear starvation cases or clear abuse cases, and some of them aren't. But this prosecutor would get all of these cases. I am assuming because she just loves animals, and would just prosecute them whether they were meritorious or not. In this particular case, that was a point that was made to me is, well, there are funds for people, and if you go to the MSPCA, they'll give you a discount. Well, my experience being a pet owner is, when you look at the yellow pages, there's no quarter page, half page, anything that says discount funds. The shadow fund may exist, but it's for people in the know. It's not for, I would say, how many people out of the population know that fund exists? I would say it's de minimis. It's not advertised. I can't open up the Eagle Tribune and see the shadow fund, free funds for your pet services. There aren't ads like that.
I disagree with you. I think that the average person knows that if you can't care for your animal, you drop it off to the MSPCA, and they're not going to charge you, and they're going to take the animal, and then they're going to provide a care. I disagree with what you're saying, that nobody knows that there's something to do with your animal if it's suffering and you can't care for it. I disagree.
What
I
happens
think
if
that's
your
wrong.
kid is suffering, can't take care of it? What do you still, it's like, same thing. So what if you have a kid, you can't take care of it? What happens? DSS.
Well, that's,
You know, I mean,
that's a
it's-
little different though.
Well,
and,
it's
so-
different.
and that's a common, and I gotta tell you, that is a common tactic that the Commonwealth will use. They'll use this is a helpless baby. But it's not. It's not, it's an animal, all right? And when you, because, and that gets sort of down to the bitter end of this. But hold that point, I wanna get back to it. From my point of view, the positive things in this case were she did contact vets, and the vet said give it Pedialyte and give it, and not in the facts, but what came out during trial was give it rice, because the rice, like the brat diet, will stop the vomiting. She also had this other dog that was in perfect health, but she couldn't afford the shots, and this dog wasn't licensed. And there's a little, yes.
When she called the vets, did she describe the actual physical condition of the dog?
I don't think so.
Because it would be more than likely that the vet would say, you better get that dog in here. I mean, all the reports indicate is that, yes, she did call the vet, which Pedialyte, from what I've seen, would be the common thing to give the dog. But if I called the vet and I was in her shoes, I said, yeah, the dog's ribs are showing, guesstimate the amount of pounds that were lost, I would venture to say, a vet would say, bring that dog in here.
It's unclear when she called the vet, at what stage, how many days the dog had been vomiting for, because we're talking about a 3-week process, and that was never brought up when she called the vet, what the condition of the dog was when she called the vet, other than had vomiting and diarrhea. Maybe I assumed, but I thought it was fairly clear that she did not actually speak to a veterinarian. When you call a vet's office, most likely you're just talking to whatever. And she said, well, I don't have any money. And I'm sure the person on the phone said, we'll give it rice and Pedialyte. That's generally what we recommend. She,
Or was that just her testimony?
well, the only evidence, quite frankly, was her testimony. The officer got up and basically reiterated the police report verbatim, which was, for me, that was fine. There was no evidence. I mean, she apparently, the dog, this was an indoor-outdoor dog. She let it out into her yard. She had this other dog named Bebe, who, this will be appalling to you, but Bebe ate people food, all right? I grew up with a dog, and he gave the dog food because, you know, people food is bad for the dog. But Bebe ate people food. Bebe would not touch the other dog's food. They gave the other dog the kibble. They gave Precious kibble. And it's not they, it's she. The mother had nothing to do with this. You know, that's a good question. Let's see here. 27, 26.
That? Now you get the idea. Okay, you don't. I thought she was, I give her the benefit of the doubt of senility.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought this was an older person who just didn't know how to go.
Nope, this is a younger person. But on the plus side, she had the dog that was in perfect health. She had then this dog that got sick. She made the calls initially, and she followed the advice of the veterinarian or whoever she spoke to. And the dog got sicker and sicker. She couldn't afford to take it to the vet, and so the dog ultimately died. And so those are the facts, and the facts came out just like that. The officer got in and testified to exactly what's in the police report. I thought the most damning thing was that she said, well, if you had seen the dog when it was healthy, you'd think I was maltreating it. How did this case, however, come to light? Another super fact for us. How did this case come about?
She brought the animal.
She brought the animal for proper disposal. That's right. She didn't. If she were mistreating the dog, it is rumored that the judge turned to a court officer and said, geez, if she just covered it with some leaves and put it in a garbage bag, we wouldn't have been here today. Words to that effect. She brought the dog in to be disposed of properly, and she brought it to the MSPCA because they're the cheapest. It was $30 as opposed to like $90 at every other vet.
So she's not embarrassed to take a living dog to the MSPCA?
She wasn't.
No, she didn't.
She was embarrassed.
The MSPCA, just like the Shadow Fund, there's not a billboard on 93 and 213 that says, discount vet services here, or if you can't care for your dog, we will. That's not up there. You folks, I would suggest, with college educations, with law school, who read, who are involved in, and you're in this course, so you're clearly involved with this type of thing, know that. I gotta tell you, I didn't know the MSPCA gave discount.
You haven't been to the MSPCA?
Unfortunately, I have. We've petted the bunnies, we've looked at the cats, we've been afraid of the dogs.
To surrender their dogs. I mean,
No, I haven't.
Okay, well,
No,
I think
and-
that your assumption is wrong. I think that the average person, maybe more so, the uneducated person may know that that's where you can dump your dog when you no longer care for it. I've spent quite a bit of time over there and seen the people coming in and out, and they're...
You're off the prosecution team. She's the new leader. I was court appointed. I was court appointed in this. But I believe that she was, in this case, she did not commit a crime. Is what she did negligent? Oh, yeah. Is it stupid? Reprehensible? Yes. Well, there's the issue. That's the ultimate issue. So,
You know what I don't understand though, is that if she didn't know about the MSPCA and she was in, she didn't know anything, and this dog basically died due to whatever it was, maltreatment or malnourishment or whatever it may be, and then the police officer informed her that he asked her if the other dog,
Baby.
if that dog had a license and shots, and she said no, and he said, you know that you can surrender her, so.
Oh, let me
I'm
just
assuming-
stop you right there. That's not exactly what happened. What exactly happened, uncontroverted, was after looking and doing their investigation, and I did a motion to suppress statements because basically what happened is they came in, she invited them in, they ran through all the facts, they took pictures, they did everything, and then they said, oh, by the way, here's your Miranda warning. Let's go over it again now. What happened? And then they did that, which is a little sleazy, but it happens all the time. In this particular case, no, she did not know that they offer discount services. She knew of the MSPCA.
No, what I'm saying is that even though it was already, the dog already died, and the police were there and they told her that you could take this dog, the fine dog, you could take him to the MSPCA if you can't care for him. She still said, I'll think about it.
No, she didn't. She didn't say that at all. What they said was, where's the proof for rabies shots and where's the license? You don't have one, we're taking your dog. You can get your dog back once you get the license and whatever. So she actually got the money up to get the license. She went to get the dog, and they said, oh, by the way, one thing we didn't tell you. The license is so much. The rabies shots are going to cost you so much. Plus, it's $30 a day. You got an additional $280? No. So what happened to Bebe, folks? Do you know what happens when the Lawrence police take a dog that isn't licensed? Take a guess, folks. Where does it go?
Gets the shot.
They killed the healthy dog. They killed the healthy dog. They killed the healthy dog. A perfectly good dog. They killed that one. And the dog that this girl tries to nurse back to health because she believes, rightly or wrongly, stupidly, nobody took the dog within 30 days. It got the shot. Dead dog. Bye-bye, baby. Healthy dog. You're dead now.
So what was the other option, was to have her bring it back and let the same thing happen?
No, the other option is to let her keep the dog and say, we'll give you 2 weeks to prove that you can license it. Get up the money. Because quite frankly, Bebe was what, 4 or 5 years old? And even without, the rabies shots aren't an issue because Baby's an indoor dog. He's not going to go tussling with any raccoons or something outside. So Baby's not going to get rabies, and Baby has never had a problem.
Wow, what kind of dog was Baby?
Baby was one of those like pug kind of things. It was really, well, it was more like a pug chihuahua mix. It was really ugly, quite frankly.
Dogs, do you?
I love dogs. I'm a big dog kind of guy, though. I'm not a little dog.
That's shocking.
Here's the problem I have. I actually was in a situation where I didn't have a lot of money, and I had a sick dog, and it was a young dog, and it was the love of my 5 children and myself. And when the dog got sick, and I didn't know what was wrong with it, and it ended up having diabetes, and I didn't have the money, I literally begged the veterinarian, what can I do to pay the cost of this? I painted his offices, I plastered them, whatever necessary for my dog to get the care. This woman didn't even take the dog to a vet.
No, because she didn't have the $300. When they call around and say, I need to bring my dog to a vet, most vets will say, all right, the initial fee is, I was going to introduce something from Bulger's Animal Hospital, and I didn't bring it because I thought it was kind of funny. It's like $75 just for the consultation to walk in the door, which you didn't have.
For emergency.
No, it's $125 for an emergency visit. It's $75 for a regular visit. I know because I brought our mouse there.
I know, but having talked to vets because I didn't have the money at the time, I called around and said, do you discount for people who don't have a lot? And yes, I actually.
I'm not saying what she did isn't probably wrong and negligent. I'm just saying it's not criminal, all right? And we'll get into the actual application of the law. What I think you folks really, and you sort of know in the back of your mind, but you really aren't focusing on, at least in the criminal cases, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not more likely than not. It's not even clear and convincing. It's not even really strong proof. It is like, the scale goes like that, beyond a doubt, all right? And in this case, if you look at both of the charges, the Commonwealth couldn't make its proof. Ultimately, case 1 got a required finding at the close of the Commonwealth's case, and the second count was a not guilty at the close of all the evidence. The what was I lost my train of thought here. Yeah, would I have brought my dog there? Yes. My train of thought was I had a mouse. My daughter has mice. We have 3 mice. I love pets. My oldest daughter is a rabbit, very surly rabbit. It's a dwarf rabbit. We have a cat that's 19 years old that we give medicine to daily, and we had 3 mice. And one of the mice started having respiratory problems, which is not uncommon for mice. And it was breathing really rapidly and shallowly. This is a mouse, quite frankly, that cost $1.50, all right, maybe $2. It's a feeder mouse. It's basically snake food, okay? It's snake food. But we brought the mouse to the vet, $75, another $50 to put it to sleep because it was suffering. So $120, $25 later, I have a box with a mouse in it that we kept in our freezer until the thaw, and then we dug a grave and buried the mouse. So it's not that I'm completely insensitive. It's that I believe people shouldn't be charged criminally for stupid things that they do. And there's a saying in the law that we don't punish mistakes. We punish intentional crimes, generally. Well, we're going to get there, I swear. So for the first count, the evidence came in that way, basically, and I cross-examined the vet. I did a motion, Daubert motion. You folks ever heard of Daubert, Lanigan? What is Daubert and Lanigan?
Lanigan, I'm not familiar with. Daubert is what expert testimony can be addressed with scientific proof?
Right. It's basically, it's a case law, and Lanigan is the Massachusetts case, which basically makes the judge the gatekeeper. And it used to be what they called the Fry standard. That was the name of the case, and now it's the Daubert-Lanigan standard. And it's basically, is this evidence that the Commonwealth wants to introduce, or any party wants to introduce, is it reliable? And there are some tests for reliability, like is it repeatable? Is it subject to peer review? Is it commonly allowed in criminal cases? And that is the judge's call. He's the gatekeeper. And so basically I did a motion to exclude the veterinary testimony, which the judge almost allowed, simply because I went through on my cross-examination of the vet. I asked those questions. You didn't do an autopsy. You didn't take any samples. Basically what she did is she took the dog out of the freezer. She couldn't palpitate it because it was just frozen. She looked at it and said, this dog is like 20 to 27 pounds lighter than it should be. It looks like it starved to death due to vomiting and diarrhea. And you're right, the vomiting and diarrhea could have been possibly speculation, could have been treated by a $7 antibiotic. Or it could have been stomach cancer. Nobody knows that.
But she didn't seek any help. And when you say that people don't know about the shadow fund, people who have children and need services try to seek out services. She didn't try to seek out services other than calling a vet and saying, my dog's sick and I can't afford to come in.
It's not folks, it's not a baby, all right? And that's the difference, and the Commonwealth loves to do this one. It's a baby. It's a defenseless child, just like a child. And when the Commonwealth ever tries that gets struck immediately, because it's not a baby, it's an animal, all right?
Did they ever find out how many places she called to get the cheapest price of disposal? Because you had said that...
Uncontroverted. No.
She just called one place and it was the cheapest? Then
No, she must have called 2 or 3, but we never...
She did her homework, though, with that, but she didn't do her homework.
No, because she called 3 vets as well when she...
But not for prices, I didn't see it.
No, not for prices, and that's a great question. And I got to tell you, the prosecution was not its sharpest in this case.
Do you think the fact that she called around at all is in a way more damning?
For what? To dispose of the body, or to find out what to do?
I would say both. It indicates some level of knowledge, some clue, and some effort.
Well,
and some mindfulness of the situation, and then back it away.
No, I would say no. I think it shows, in fact, what the Commonwealth needs to show is that she willfully and intentionally did one of the enumerated things. And so if you look at the complaint, nobody could really say, did she overdrive it? No, overload, drive when overloaded. Does anybody know the history of the statute?
Pertaining to horses, right?
Well, it pertained to horses, exactly. They'd be driven until they just dropped in the street. And this statute, I did a motion to report the question because I framed it in a particular way. It's from the 1800s, you know. Right. So those things don't even come in, and they didn't say. What we have here is, did she deprive this of necessary sustenance? Now, the evidence was uncontroverted that when the dog started to get sick, she called around, she heard, give it rice, she gave it rice, uncontroverted. Give it Pedialyte to keep it hydrated. Now, she testified on direct examination that she heard, give it Pedialyte or Dimetapp. All right? Yeah, that's what I did too. I gave it that face. Dimetapp? Does it have a nasty cold or something? No. She was clearly confused. It was Pedialyte, and then when she went to the pharmacy, they said, give it Gatorade because the dogs like the salt. You know, if you mix it, cut it right. So she did that. It was also uncontroverted that when it started to get sicker and sicker, one, she believed that the dog would recover because she thought it was a short-term thing, and two, that she blended the rice, cooked liver, blended the liver, and fed it with a syringe. And also, whenever she was around, which would be, and it wasn't clear how often she'd go and say hello to the dog, and the Commonwealth probably should have harped on that one more. The dog would get up, smile, wag its tail, come drink some water, and then lie back down. With regard to the basement thing, that kind of took me by surprise. I think most people, and this is possibly wrong, but at least the judge, and I actually got the vet to testify to this one, that dogs like to, when they're dying, they like to be protected, like giving birth and dying, they like to get in a closed space. And this, the pictures you couldn't see, the dog got under the stairs by going through this thing that's like this tall, and then it crawled underneath the stairs. The Commonwealth seemed to make a big deal of it, but the basement wasn't cold. I don't know who said the cold basement before. The basement wasn't cold, and it wasn't dirty, and she cleaned it, and the cage, this was a crate animal. Anybody have crate dogs? No? You know, there's some philosophy that when you raise a dog in a crate, and I got this out of the vet too, they feel more comfortable in the crate, they like to be in the crate. There was a picture showing some feces in the crate, but it wasn't, you guys dropped the ball, did a very poor job. You didn't find out how long it was in there for, because if she made the dog stay in its own excrement, then that might be cruel.
So you outlawyered the other side of this case, it sounds as if that's what happened.
No. As a little aside, the issue is deprived of necessary sustenance, all right? It's clearly she didn't cruelly beat, maim, kill. She didn't cause or procure anyone to do anything. So did she deprive it of necessary sustenance?
The animal is being given it, okay? Obviously she put it down, but if it's not eating it, then it's being deprived of sustenance. I mean, because that's common sense.
Well, what should she have given it? Who's our vet? Who did I name as our vet? Okay, so what should she have given it? You didn't testify to that.
She needed to go to an authority and say, the dog will not take food or water. What do I do?
Where does that say that in the statute?
It doesn't. But
Yes, that's in there. You go.
You are depriving it if it's not actually taking it.
No, but
I don't think that's true. I mean, that's not withholding.
that's
It's an offer.
where's the
You shove
deprive
it
of
through
necessary.
the syringe.
Well, the issue that I saw and the way I go ahead.
No, go ahead, finish.
Well, the issue that I saw and the way I framed it, if you read my motion to report this, is what the hell does sustenance mean in 1888? Do you think that the legislature in 1888, where they had dogs you think the dogs came inside and were pampered little lap doggies that went to and got cut at Petco? You think that happened in 1888? Or were these working animals that lived outside in the barn that had to kill rats to survive? What is sustenance in 1888? Do you think it means getting the best veterinary care? I don't think so.
I think, I'm sorry, I think she was a little bit smarter than you maybe gave her credit for, because in the police report, when I was reading it, I was pretty appalled at the fact that the cop apparently had asked her if she knew about the MSPCA, and she said she had thought about calling them, but quote unquote, she didn't because the dog looked so bad. And they would think that she was being cruel to them. So she had some knowledge that what she was doing was wrong.
They call that, and there's an instruction for it, it's called consciousness of guilt. All right? And there's an actual instruction that says, if you take these things that she does to be, in essence, her knowledge, you can infer certain things to be consciousness of guilt. But, defense team, what's the exact reply to that?
That you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
No. What did she do? How did this case come about?
She
She
brought it.
brought the dog to the MSPCA. But if she said, if she thought, okay, I've killed this dog, how should I get caught now? No, she didn't think she did anything wrong. She brought the dog to the MSPCA. Oh, let me interrupt here. Who, do you folks know who polices the cruelty to animals statute?
Dog officers.
Who?
Dog officers.
And who else? The MSPCA. Who pays the salaries of the officers? Yes, the MSPCA. So unless they're scaring up more and more crimes, they don't get the funding to prosecute the crimes. It's kind of a catch-22. Seriously. Well, you throw it out there.
Killed the perfectly good dog. I mean, I find
They
that
did kill the
almost as
perfectly
ludicrous.
they did kill the perfectly good dog. That is a fact.
In your motion, you say, with respect to the word sustenance, that it's, when it's unclear on the use of the term, you use the word in its usual and accepted meaning from sources, blah, 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 possibly the dictionary. A couple questions. Did the judge pick up a dictionary? I know you noted in your motion that Webster's third new international dictionary presently defines sustenance as a means of support or maintenance or subsistence as an earning a living, food, refreshment, and nourishment. I found otherwise, American Heritage Dictionary defines it as anything to support life or health, the act of sustaining, anything that sustains life or health. And then there's Merriam-Webster's dictionary that pretty much says the same. Anything that sustains life or health.
Webster.
Mosby's medical dictionary, the common usage in the medical field. Sustenance is anything that sustains or supports the living or well-being or health of a person.
And that's why I did the motion. Because if that's the case, let's use that definition. If that's the case, if it's anything other than food or water, then the statute itself is just too vague. Because let's, and so, I mean, my logic leads me down this road, which gets us to the ultimate question is, who's had the golden retriever with the hip problems? Who had the dog with the hip problems? I mean, do you have to take that dog, or a dog with cancer, or a pet with cancer? Do you have to take the dog and get the $20,000 treatments? Or are you saying, if you don't get that $20,000 treatment for cancer, and this is an aside as well, apparently one of the secretaries of one of the judges had the cat and went and got the $20,000 worth of cancer treatment for that pet. Had to mortgage her house to treat the pet because that's what she wanted to do. Of course, the pet died anyway, sad but true, but she had that. And so the question becomes, if that's how you read sustenance, the two issues are, one, what am I supposed to do? What are we as pet owners supposed to do? Does that mean by taking this mouse, I need to have like thoracic surgery on my $1.50 mouse? Because it might save it, and that's sustenance, that which gives life. I go in, they say, if you don't have this $500 surgery or what have you, your mouse is going to die.
You know, anything that sustains life, if the animal is not getting the water, some kind of IV sustenance, okay? And if not, then, and if she can't afford it, maybe she needs to euthanize the poor creature so it doesn't suffer.
But hold on one second here, and that's the vagaries. That is the next argument in this statute is unconstitutionally vague. Because if you can read it that it requires the IV or kill, and you don't read it that way, what are you to think? You're the DA. You're saying, yes, she committed the crime. The DA in this case made the mistake of just not saying the crime in this case is either depriving it of sustenance, which means veterinary care, reasonable veterinary care. She never came out and said that. She should have. That's the crime in this case, depriving it of veterinary care. And my argument is, where does it say that? Because sustenance in 1880, from everything we can read, if you look at the tenor of the statute, it just means you got to give it food and water. All right? So the judge said, look it, after hearing that she put down the rice and the liver and what, he said, I'm not going to deal with that one. Let's deal with the cruelty. And so the cruelty issue, what does she need to prove? What elements does she need to prove? Yeah, there's one of them.
Which I see, I'm sorry.
It's right in the statute. You sort of got to break it down, and I got to find their jury instructions were different from my jury instructions, because there are no real good jury instructions for this. You got to make them up. And so my jury instructions, in essence, were, oh, where the hell did it go? It was a bench trial, but you still need to. One, when you mark up a jury trial, you need to have everything ready to go for the jury. And two, whenever you do anything in terms of litigation, I've been trained to, before I even write a complaint, even if like it's a simple car accident where I know what the elements, and say in New Hampshire where you have to write them out, where you list what the duty and all the duties are, the breach, the cause and fact, the proximate cause and damages have to be listed in the complaint. Same with criminal litigation. You need to know what elements the Commonwealth needs to prove so that you can not prove one of them.
You're not filing jury instructions because it's going to the judge, correct?
Well, we didn't know that on that morning, and you still need to know what the elements are so that you can show that they didn't meet them. My elements that I had was that she had charge or custody of an animal, either as owner or otherwise, and that was basically shown. Second, that she inflicted cruelty upon it, all right? Inflicted cruelty upon it. Third, that the cruelty inflicted was unnecessary. And fourth, that it was intentionally done. So it needs to be infliction of cruelty, and not only that, but the cruelty needs to be unnecessary. And quite frankly, my argument was, she is not God. She did not create heaven and earth. She did not create suffering. She did not create pain. She actually, and in good faith and uncontroverted, believed that she was going to nurse the dog back to health. And it got sicker and sicker and died.
I mean, for real though.
The dog wasn't eating or drinking.
I find that hard to believe when she quote unquote said, they're gonna think I'm
But
being
did
cruel
she,
to her.
but what was the cruelty that she inflicted upon it? The fact that it was sick?
Suffering. Suffering.
No. It's not suffering.
That animal was unable to take food or water and became emaciated.
So she should have killed it?
Yes.
The inflicted. What was it? Just name the cruelty. Was it cruel when she fed it with a syringe? Was it cruel when she gave it the rice? Was it cruel when she gave it the
It was
Pedialyte?
cruel when she put it in the basement because she didn't want to pay for it to see a vet. That's
When she
really
willfully
bottom line.
abandoned it to the
Sorry,
point
that's
of
the way I see it.
endangerment.
One more time.
When she willfully abandoned it to the point of endangerment.
But she didn't abandon it. She was feeding it every day.
It's abandoned.
To even
Well,
have the
define
thought of bringing
abandonment.
it to SBA.
Hold on, one, you're not allowed to talk, and two, you're on the defense. Back me up here.
She even thought about bringing it to the MSPCA. She thought of it, and then she's like, no, because she had the thought in the back of her mind. That's cool.
Yeah, I like that.
That's cool, because she had the thought that she knew she should bring it, but you know what? Maybe I shouldn't because they're gonna think I did. Well, you know what? You're being cool. I'll bring it by there to give it its
its needs and its.
But
She
what
knew
is
that-
what
for
is
her
the
to have that-
cruelty?
Hold
I mean,
on.
say the
That's
specific
cool.
thing.
That's cool. For her to have the thought and
Let me cut you off. Because I got to tell you, the Commonwealth could not just say it's cruel to let the dog starve to death.
It's cruel.
Okay,
What
because
is cruel?
and the bottom line though is, why was it starving to death? You don't know. You don't know. You don't. Nobody in this room knows.
And she didn't know because she didn't go to a vet.
Well, one thing I
That's
do
right,
know-
because she couldn't afford the vet.
One thing I do know is that had the dog been fed, okay, it would not have at least starved to death.
What you testified to under oath was the dog simply, for some reason that you don't know, could not absorb the food. There was no absorption. She could not say that the dog wasn't fed. She could not say that the dog wasn't fed good dog food. She listened to the rice and liver thing, kind of nodded. As an aside, I'm going to skip that one.
Can I say something though?
Yep.
Necessary sustenance is that which sustains life. If your dog is emaciated and losing weight, it's not getting the sustenance necessary to sustain life.
But you're
So-
assuming that there is sustenance that this dog could absorb. And you're basing it on God knows what, because she didn't testify to that. You don't know if this has extreme colon cancer, so that it simply can't absorb. You don't know if it's got a brain tumor, so that its thing isn't. You have no idea. You don't know if it has cancer. You don't know what caused this dog not to be able to digest. No one knows that.
Okay, but
Autopsy not done on this dog.
Why didn't you do an autopsy?
putting all.
I have no freaking idea. I'm just stunned.
We had a dog die, and we spent $6,000, and he died, and I didn't do an autopsy because I saw no need at that point. But I spent over $6,000 to keep that dog alive in 24 hours.
Right.
Because I knew that the dog needed to be cared for.
But you had it.
But I did, but I don't know what.
But she could have dropped the animal off and said, you know what? I love this animal enough. I can't afford.
Let me stop right there. And there's another thing that and you can hate me, I don't care. I kind of like it. Who the hell are you to say it doesn't hurt to be euthanized? Who are you to say it doesn't hurt like hell to be killed by injection? Does anyone here know? No, because you haven't died and you haven't been injected. I don't care if you've been put to sleep. Anybody ever read Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, that book on death and dying? You don't know. You don't know. It might be 5 times as painful as going naturally. And here's what really pissed me off about this thing. What you're in essence saying is this: if the dog is in such bad condition that it should be put to sleep because it's suffering, because it can't absorb food, if it's in that bad condition, then we should put it to sleep. And that's certainly one way to read the statute. The other way to read the statute is, no, you do what you can, you pray to God that the thing is going to get better, and if it doesn't, you let God be God. And if you can't tell me exactly what that statute says one way or another, then you got a problem with the statute, because the statute is unconstitutional. It is vague.
Let me ask something. Should the prosecution have pursued sustenance more? Because, I mean, just looking up online dictionaries, it really is broader than just
I
food and
don't,
water.
well,
I mean, just say you were them.
That's why I wrote this, because I didn't know. Quite frankly, I would have said, yes, sustenance is, if I were the prosecution, I would have gone after this completely differently. I would have said, sustenance means reasonable veterinary care. She didn't even take it to a vet. And the reason she didn't take it to a vet is because it didn't. Now, bring out your baby. Roll your baby out. Because there is no law that I'm aware of that says you got to bring a baby to a doctor.
What?
Child endangerment?
Excuse me?
That's afterwards.
There's not, I don't know how many lawsuits have there been there for the parents, like, there haven't been any negligent
actions of the parents.
Oh, but that's, no, what I'm,
If you fail to provide reasonable medical care for your child, unless you have a religious
They're taken away
objection.
from
Even with,
the religion. Even with the
but that's
religion.
not, see, that's in the nature of a civil proceeding, not a
No.
crime. That's a 51A is not a criminal proceeding. It is not a criminal proceeding. It is not in the nature of a crime. Okay, it is a civil forfeiture.
Yeah, two crackhead parents just let their baby waste away. Surely there's some criminal element.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
exactly what
and
I'm
that would be like a murder or manslaughter. But that's a pretty easy statute to define. The cruelty,
The little baby has some kind of cancer that they do nothing, diagnosed to do nothing about, or guess at, do nothing about. Still not a crime?
there you go. Let's have at it.
Well, I don't know, just ask.
I don't know either. I don't know. And that's the whole thing. Say, okay, here, I'll be the Christian Science. I am the Christian Scientist. And my daughter has cancer. And I choose to do nothing, or which I define as prayer, actually. It's prayer.
Have any children? I'm curious.
No.
She has none.
If you were the prosecution, would you have brought up the fact that, like, obviously to get SSI, you don't just get it. You have to go through a lot of things to apply for it.
Can't touch that.
Why?
What
Because she's not totally religious.
No. What they because that's prejudicial and it's unreasonable. What you can go after is, when did you work? What do you do? How guess what this lady's level of education was?
Probably less than high school.
College.
Oh, stop.
College.
What evidence did you
I didn't
get
bring that up, but the prosecution didn't ask either.
What evidence did you get excluded?
Let's see here. What did I get excluded? Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. So you filed motions to exclude and you lost.
I excluded most of the pictures of the dog. But it didn't matter to me that nothing's excluded for...
You said there were statements that you
Oh.
sought to exclude. What about those?
Sometimes you bring a motion to suppress, and sometimes you bring a motion to suppress to commit.
Well, what did you get suppressed or excluded?
At the end of the motion to suppress, I withdrew the motion to suppress because I just wanted the police officer to commit to one story, the story that was in the police report.
Could you argue that the cruelty began way before this even started, when she didn't get the proper licenses for the dogs and she didn't get the proper shots for the dogs?
How is that cruel? How is not paying a fee to the Commonwealth cruel?
Because they still don't have the shots that they're supposed to get
Yeah,
to
but there's-
avoid any diseases that they might.
I guess you could, but that's one, and another way to build. The way in litigation, quite frankly, the reason you have depositions in a civil thing and interrogatories and discovery is to get them to commit. You're not getting the smoking gun, you're building the walls. You're making it so there's no way out. You're defining them into an area. That's what the bill of particulars was for, to define them into the area. That's what the motion was for. Define, I want to know exactly what my client said to you. Nothing, because if you don't do that, then up on the stand, the cop will say, and then she said that she knew the dog was deathly ill, but she just didn't really love it. That she treats her small dog better and her big dog, because it was somebody else that she didn't care.
Are you saying she couldn't be trusted? She was under oath and she couldn't be trusted to testify under oath? Or are you just...
That is exactly what I'm saying. That is exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying, do you think police officers, when they put on a badge, somehow lose their motivations, somehow become less human, become more honest, become more diligent, become more or less biased? Do you think police officers don't lie? Do you think that putting on that uniform makes them more trustworthy? It doesn't. The ends justify the means. And it happens more with authorities in higher positions, believe it or not. The state police, quite frankly.
A jury would have believed that officer over your client's ridiculous story about she called 3 vets and they told her to give her...
No, they wouldn't,
That story
because
doesn't fly with me at
no, because
all.
the officer testified to that.
The officer testified to what?
That she called Well,
So affidavits from the vets that
It's a
you called,
hearsay.
was there any evidence?
You don't-
Can you just answer the question? Was there any evidence outside of the fact of outside of your client's testimony that supports the fact that she called the vets? Was there anything?
the officer testified that she said that.
Well,
I know
that's hearsay.
No, it's not.
Is there
How
any-
is that not
is
hearsay?
there
It's a
any-
Hello?
factual statement.
Statement of a party opponent. You really need to learn your hearsay rules. That's not even close to hearsay.
Is there any other evidence? No, right?
Is there any independent? No. As a matter of fact, I followed up on it. She couldn't remember the name of the vet. I went to the pharmacy.
None of the three that you called you couldn't remember?
No, I went to the pharmacy and I spoke to the lady that she spoke to.
If she did call the vet and.
No, okay, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I'll bring it up now. I have it on authority that when she testified that the vet told her to give it rice, that the judge believed her because the judge had had a sick dog, and that's what the vet told the judge to do.
Hamburger and rice. It's not rice. It's hamburger and rice because there's no protein in just rice. There's no competent vet or vet tech would say
I'm
that.
only telling you what I hear through the grapevine.
Well, she gave a pureed liver too, so there's the protein. But the fact is, it's a kind of moot, don't you think? Because calling the vet wasn't what this dog needed. What it needed was, here's a dog, whether it's taking it in or not, it's going out the other end, he's becoming emaciated, he obviously needs more than that to sustain him for the sustenance.
If this were a civil case and I represented the rights of the dog, I'd agree with you 100%. Did she make a mistake? Was it a stupid, careless, cruel thing to do on a civil level? Yes. Does it rise to the level of a crime where she should go to jail for 2 years? A year and a year? No. Well, especially when the dog is sick and they don't know. The dog's, imagine the most emaciated dog. Yeah, sorry, keep your arm up in the air. So.
First of all, I take exception to your perception of police officers.
I take
stereotyping.
No, I'm not saying police officers are dishonest. What I'm saying is they are just as honest as everyone else. They are subject to the same forces, same desires, same motivations, same biases as everyone else. But I would add this to tweak your nose. They deal with scum all day long, and it affects their perception. They deal with the worst of the worst, and because they deal with the worst of the worst, they become jaded. Just like I've seen things, and let me tell you, folks, this nice classroom with you people who are passionate and intelligent is, you're like the 1% of America right here. I've seen things that would it's mind-boggling. The abuses and the just stupidity. People who walk into that courtroom on general must have a 90 IQ, an IQ of 90 on average as a defendant. Because if they were smarter, they wouldn't get caught, quite frankly. They're dumb, they're abusive, they're ignorant. And as soon as you get your head around that one, I grew up very privileged, obviously, affluent, wealthy, educated. The world isn't that way. It really isn't. And the people in the poor communities in this area, it still blows my mind how they have just a completely different set of values, a completely different circumstance. Instead of trying to obtain an education and improve themselves, their goal is to find a provider, and whether that provider is providing by selling narcotics to school kids, it doesn't matter, because that's how they're providing for themselves. And that's what police officers deal with every day.
This woman, even if she was convicted, she would probably never do a day behind bars.
Well, she'd never committed any. She'd never done anything more, no. And what she did is a horrible, cruel thing in a civil sense. I'll never admit that she committed a crime, because she didn't commit a crime. She made a mistake, and the law is not intended to punish stupidity. No, it's not. No,
Smarter
it's,
than-
no, it's not. Criminal,
You say that, but then we have laws in the books that if you make a mistake, you're gonna be held accountable criminally as people, so you're saying.
no,
I don't
very,
understand how you say
I
that.
cannot, with the possible exception of negligent operation of a motor vehicle, which punishes negligence, all of the criminal statutes are intent statutes. So not only did she need to make this stupid mistake, she needed to intend. And she,
Willfully allowed that dog to starve to death.
no, because we
With
don't
full
know why
intent.
the dog died.
We don't. That is.
And for this
It's an unfortunate
exercise-
thing that no autopsy was done. It is unfortunate because it's beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no doubt that you can't prove that the dog might have been poisoned. And no matter what was done, whether it be vet care or not, it might have died anyway. The unfortunate thing is that the autopsy wasn't done.
That was a big problem with their case. The other big problem was the Commonwealth really didn't focus on what its theory of the case is. Once you know what you need to prove or disprove, then you need to say, all right, what is my theory of the case? And the Commonwealth just didn't bring it together.
Part of the problem is that space in between active cruelty and to countenance or not endure, because you're not the dog, but to witness suffering. It seems to me.
Yeah, but that's the nature of.
Permit it to occur before your eyes over a month-long period.
Well, that's the sort of problem that, say you have like a 19-year-old German Shepherd, or I think German Shepherds and Golden Retrievers have hip problems. I mean, do you, and this is the tension between, do you let the animal continue to exist knowing that it's suffering? Because I had an older Golden Retriever, and at some point they can't even get up to get their water and food. And this is your best friend. Do you kill your best friend, or do you let your best friend suffer?
Reasonable
Okay,
measures.
you said she's college educated, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The dog had persistent vomiting and diarrhea, which the dog became dehydrated. There's various degrees of dehydration. Mild, moderate, and severe. It had to be clearly evident by the dog's physical condition that the dog was suffering from severe dehydration, which she can give it all the water in the world. But when it reaches that point of a certain percentage of loss in body weight and fluids, it is required, medical attention is required. And you're telling me this woman couldn't see a dog like this, and
I can't see a dog like that.
that's a pit bull, an emaciated, malnourished, dehydrated pit bull. You're telling me that college-educated woman couldn't say, that dog really needs medical attention?
It probably does.
She
And would I give it
should
medical
do it.
attention?
No,
Yes.
because she's
But the
not.
issue is
It's a statute.
the statute.
Statute is.
It's the
that's
statute. So,
agree with that, but
I-
it's not.
and it's the statute, and the statute hasn't been addressed. And then, and this is where the conversation should be, and should be focusing all along, is, do you really want a statute that says you're required to take your dog to the vet? Because that doesn't do anything. You take the dog to the vet, and it still has the same thing, and then you go home. Or do you want the statute to say you're required to take reasonable care, veterinary care? Well, what's reasonable veterinary care? I mean, if you say reasonable veterinary care, you're the district attorney, and you might think reasonable veterinary care this year means having everybody get a hip replacement, whereas when you get voted out of office, and John Burke got voted out of office, and the new DA's there, the new DAs might say, no, reasonable means you kill it because it's suffering.
Reasonable might have meant an appointment in this case.
Yeah, it might have been.
I think this went beyond reasonable. This is just blatant common sense.
But that's
theory.
reasonable isn't in this statute. In this statute, the elements are Did she inflict cruelty? The cruelty was that it suffered because it wasn't absorbing. Was she the one who didn't make it absorb? There's no evidence that she didn't do that. That's the...
Or knowingly and willfully allowed it to happen. I mean, you know, we're not saying that she willfully, she allowed it to happen, though.
Does the statute address allowing
She
it to happen?
acknowledged that the dog was not absorbing. It would take a moron not to know, watching the dog become emaciated like that.
I mean, I think we're all frustrated by the fact, and we've seen this in this class so far. It's a statute. The statute doesn't exist. Animals are property. They aren't humans. And I think that's where the whole case, is the pivotal point of the case. Whether you're talking about humanity is one thing and the law is another. And the law today doesn't protect animals.
And if the statute's vague, would the judge go to outside authorities?
The statute...
The judge can.
The statute, the judge can, and you look at the legislative history, and there is none. And the statute didn't think that it was vague. That the way he interpreted it was food and water.
Because I mean, like Maine,
It doesn't mean medicine.
Maine, New Jersey, New York, all incorporate veterinary care into the term sustenance.
Gosh, I just read the New York statute, and I thought I brought it with me, but I guess I don't have it. And I was just looking at the New York statute, and I thought New York was interesting because they distinguish, arbitrarily in my mind, the companion animal from all other animals. So somehow dogs, cats, and other animals that you live with get special treatment. And then if you read the actual statute, it's in agricultural section 353, it's almost identical. A person who overdrives, overloads, tortures, cruelly beats, or unjustifiably injures, maims, mutilates, kills any animal, wild or tame, belonging to himself and another, or deprives any animal of necessary sustenance, food or drink, or neglects or refuses to furnish it, yada, yada, yada. So it's really on that count, it's almost identical, and they don't, I didn't see the definition of sustenance. The only definition...
Maybe it wasn't New York, but
Yeah.
it means deprives any animal that person owns or possesses of necessary sustenance, necessary medical attention, proper shelter, protection from weather, or humanely clean conditions, and then it goes on.
But-
New Jersey's is almost identical to
But
that.
say this were Maine, how do you know it's necessary when you don't know what caused the death? Because quite frankly,
Physical appearance alone.
No, but
says
say-
it's
let's-
necessary.
let's say the dog has cancer. Do you read that statute requiring the dog to get cancer chemotherapy?
I don't think that's the plight. I don't think that's what they're arguing. They're arguing the fact that the dog, for a long time, didn't get sustenance, did not get
No,
food, did not
no,
get
I'm,
water.
I'm not talking this case. I'm presenting like a new fact pattern. You have a dog that has cancer.
If a dog has cancer, okay, and it's unable to take sustenance, I think it would be unreasonable for a person not to consider taking it to vet to either euthanize it or to see that it gets sustenance.
Let's
Cancer
not,
or
let's
no
just,
cancer.
let's just skip the starving dog thing, and we'll just put a dog that has cancer, bone cancer, all right? You take the dog to the vet says he's gonna die in 6 months unless he gets chemotherapy. Do you read that statute as requiring chemotherapy? To the tune of, who's worked for the vet? Because it runs like in the
There's a big
tens to
difference
20,000.
because The scenario you're given, if I was in that person's shoes, I would explore options. Do you provide maybe medicine to alleviate the pain